Imagine waking up in the middle of the night by the sound of bombing right outside your window. How would you feel? Shocked? Frightened? This is what the people of Ukraine felt when Russia first invaded their country in late February of 2022. Russia's invasion on Ukraine has forced a lot of people to move their homes for a safer place, but it did not just impact Ukraine alone. In my speech, I'm going to focus on two main ways that this conflict has impacted the rest of the world. First of all is food crises, and second of all is energy challenges. So firstly, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has caused a global food crisis. How is this true? Russia is the world's largest exporter of wheat. However, as we know, their destructive actions have compelled other nations to put up sanctioning policies against them, salvaging their diplomatic relationships with one another. Now those countries now have to find other sources of food. And the problem is that the other sources produce less than Russia, yet they demand more. And now, considering how much demand there is from so many countries at the same time, the price of these commodities are so high that by the time they reach the citizens, only those who are most rich in the community are able to afford it. People in the lower social classes are starving because no matter how well paid they might be, it is still somewhat not enough to afford to put food on the table. This directly hinders the development and achievement of SDG 2, which aims to eradicate hunger. The second impact of this conflict is energy challenges. Russia is the world's second largest producer of crude oil and natural gas. As we know, placing sanctions on Russia means that those countries who used to rely on Russia to power their dams, factories, and power plants will have to seek an alternative source of energy. And this process is very complicated. So let's look at it from a perspective of a country like Germany. So first of all, Germany will have to find a country that does not have an alliance with Russia, but also has enough resources to sell to them, right? And then after they've finalized, how much energy Germany is going to receive, they need to figure out the way to get that energy back to Germany. For oil, it's very easy because you can just load them onto ships and just ship them back home. But for natural gas, it is a much more complicated process because they have to build pipelines. And these pipelines can vary in size. Some are a few meters wide, but some can be as tall as 3-story buildings. And these pipelines go through cities and towns of many different countries. Meaning Germany does not have to just simply have the construction fees for these systems, but they also have to pay the countries that the pipelines go through as a sort of compensation, because definitely some homes will have to be removed so that there is enough space for the systems to be built. So we see, just so that their citizens' homes are powered, the governments of the countries whose energy used to rely on Russia so much now have to go through such a painstaking and time-consuming process. This directly hinders the completion of SDG 7, which aims to have affordable and clean energy for all. How can energy truly be affordable if such a process is to be followed? Finally, at the end of the day, I believe that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has not just impacted these two countries, but has also spread the impact to other countries and other regions around the world too. These impacts are all things that have hindered development in so many countries, specifically developing ones who need that development in order to boost their economy and their environment. I believe that countries need to work together to either, one, stop the war, or two, find a way to mitigate the consequences of this war and this conflict so that people do not have to suffer anymore. I believe that we should all unite as one to work through this together, and I believe that will lead to a much more sustainable world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. A lot of information and good insight into how this is such a global problem. But as you mentioned at the end, I have just a quick question. As you mentioned at the end, we need to either try and stop the war or support each other. Well, stopping the war is very difficult, of course, unfortunately. So what can we do you think, once the war is finished, to go back on some of these things? How can we try and fix these issues in Ukraine or Russia specifically in order to bring back the global economy?
Well, I think that the global economy, there's a lot of, as I said, the two other factors that I've said, a lot of things contribute to the global economy as a whole, right? And I think that in order to contribute to the global economy, we cannot just simply address it as a whole, but we need to break things down even further, because it is, obviously, as we know, there are a lot of things that contribute to the economy. there are things like exports from many different regions, and there could be things like discoveries that contribute to the certain economy. So I think that in order to fix the economy, we need to go down, we need to find the roots of what has been impacted in those smaller areas, because I think that a bottom-up approach, I think, would be better than a top-down approach, and the aspect that now we are able to understand the root cause or the final impact of what is happening, and we are able to see that in a much more detailed and a much more specific frame of what has happened after the war. I think that that will help us have a much better scope and understanding of the impacts, and then from then we can truly understand and think of the solutions as to how to make the economy regrow again.
Cool. Thank you very much.